There's a kind of pain that doesn't hit right away. It creeps in slowly, quietly, and by the time it arrives, it's already too late to undo. That's the pain of realizing you've lost a good man. At first, it doesn't feel real. It feels like a fight, a pause, a silence that will eventually break. You tell yourself he'll come back. He always has. You tell yourself it's just another storm that will pass. But then you notice something different this time. His silence isn't temporary. His absence isn't a test. It's permanent, and that's when the reality sinks in. He's gone and you're left standing in the space where he used to be. See, losing a good man doesn't feel like losing anyone else. Because a good man isn't just a partner. He's protection. He's presence. He's that quiet consistency you never thought you'd miss until it's no longer there. And when he walks away, what disappears with him isn't just his voice or his laughter. It's the safety, the stability, and the loyalty he carried into every room he walked into. That absence feels bigger than the man himself, because it touches everything. The most haunting part? You don't realize what you had until it's gone. And by the time it hits, there's no way to rewind the story, no way to replay the scenes, no way to take back the choices that pushed him away. You remember the moments when he showed up without being asked, the times he carried burdens you didn't even know he was holding, the loyalty he gave even when it wasn't returned in equal measure. And suddenly, all the little things you brushed off as normal become priceless in hindsight. When a woman loses a good man, it isn't just about the man, it's about what he represented. The difference between being cared for and being left alone. The contrast between protection and vulnerability. The painful realization that not everyone out there is like him. Because once you've known what it feels like to have a good man by your side, every interaction after that feels smaller, weaker, incomplete. And here's the truth. This loss changes her. It forces her to confront not just the absence of him, but the truth about herself. Was she careless? Was she blind to his worth? Did she believe he'd always be there no matter what? The silence of his absence becomes a mirror, reflecting back not just what she lost, but the choices that led to it. And that reflection is one of the hardest things to face. But make no mistake, this pain, as sharp as it is, carries a purpose. Because losing a good man can break you, yes, but it can also wake you up. It can force you to grow. It can strip away illusions and remind you that love, loyalty, and respect are not things to ever take for granted. And if you choose to learn from it, this loss can become the very fire that forges you into someone stronger, wiser, and unshakable. Tonight, we're going to dive deep into what it really feels like when a woman loses a good man. The shock, the regret, the emptiness, the accountability, and ultimately, the crossroads where she decides who she becomes after the loss. This isn't just a story about heartbreak. This is a story about transformation. And if you've ever taken someone for granted or been taken for granted yourself, this message will hit you in a way you won't forget. The shock of realization doesn't come in one dramatic moment. It sneaks up, almost disguised, and then crashes in with a force you can't ignore. When a woman loses a good man, the first days or weeks might feel like denial. She tells herself it's just another disagreement, another temporary distance, another cooling off period. After all, he's always been there before. He always came back. So at first, it doesn't register that this time is different. She still expects the text, the call, the knock at the door. But the longer the silence stretches, the more undeniable the truth becomes. And that truth hits like ice water. It's over, and he's not coming back. The shock doesn't come from his absence alone. It comes from the contrast between who he was and what's left behind without him. Because a good man doesn't just fill space, he changes the atmosphere. His presence brings stability, direction, and a sense of security that often goes unnoticed when he's around every day. He's the one who handled the chaos without asking for recognition. The one who paid attention to the details, the one who offered strength without needing applause. When he's gone, the emptiness he leaves is more than just physical. It's emotional, it's practical, it's spiritual. And the woman who loses him begins to feel the sharp edges of what life looks like without that anchor. At first there's disbelief. She replays the last argument, the last words, the last look in his eyes. She wonders if it was really that serious, if maybe he just needs space, if maybe there's still a chance to repair what's broken. But then days turn into weeks, and the silence becomes deafening. That's when the denial breaks and the shock sets in. She realizes this isn't a pause, it's a full stop. This isn't distance, it's departure. And that realization changes everything. The shock is magnified by memory. Suddenly she starts recalling all the little things he did that seemed small at the time, but now feel enormous. The way he always checked in to make sure she was safe. The way he noticed when she was stressed even if she didn't say a word. The way he carried responsibilities quietly, so she didn't have to. Those gestures blend together to form a picture of what a good man really means. And when that picture disappears, the absence is almost unbearable. She begins to see that the stability she once thought was ordinary was actually rare, and losing it creates a hole that nothing else seems to fill. There's also shock in the role reversal. While he was there, she may have believed she held the upper hand. Maybe she thought his patience meant he'd never leave. Maybe she believed his loyalty was unshakable, no matter how many times she dismissed his feelings or overlooked his efforts. But when he finally walks away, she realizes patience has limits. Loyalty has conditions. And even the strongest man will not stay where he is, not valued. That's a bitter truth, and it shakes her. The shock is not just that he's gone, but that she underestimated the breaking point of a good man. The realization cuts deeper because of what it reveals about her own choices. In hindsight, she sees the moments where she could have responded differently. The times she could have appreciated more, listened more, respected more, and though regret comes later, the initial shock is enough to stop her cold. She recognizes, maybe for the first time, that good men are not replaceable, that not everyone will love with that same loyalty, protect with that same devotion, or invest with that same consistency. Once that awareness lands, it changes her completely. This shock also carries humiliation. Not the kind anyone else sees, but the kind she feels within herself. It's the embarrassment of realizing she had something valuable and didn't protect it. It's the sting of knowing others may see that she lost someone who genuinely cared for her. It's the private shame of facing her own mistakes. And that inner conflict is often more painful than the external loss. But the shock isn't only destructive, it has another side. It wakes her up. For many women, losing a good man is the first time they realize how rare such a partner is. It's the first time they understand that kindness, loyalty, and strength are not guaranteed. The shock forces her to see the difference between someone who is merely present and someone who is truly invested. And while that lesson comes painfully, it also carries power, because awareness is the first step to transformation. Still, in the earliest stages, that transformation feels far away. In the moment of shock, the overwhelming feeling is emptiness, a void where his presence used to be. She notices it in the quiet moments when there's no one to check if she got home safe, no one to remind her of her worth when she doubts herself, no one to carry part of the load she once took for granted. That silence is brutal, and that silence is the teacher. This is why the shock of losing a good man is unlike anything else. It's not just losing a relationship, it's losing a foundation. It's losing the one who stood steady when everything else was shaky. It's realizing that what she thought was ordinary was extraordinary all along. And the most painful part is knowing she can't go back in time to change how she treated him, how she valued him, how she responded to his love. In that moment, the shock feels unbearable. But it is also the beginning of something she cannot yet see. Because the truth is, shock doesn't last forever. Eventually it transforms into regret, into grief, into accountability, and if she chooses, into growth. But none of that can happen until the shock forces her to face the reality she once denied. She lost a good man, and nothing will ever be the same again. Regret is a cruel teacher, because it never shows up early. It arrives after the damage is already done. When the door is closed, when the silence has settled, when the good man is gone, and there is no chance left to fix it. For a woman who loses a good man, regret is not just an emotion. It's a storm. It comes in waves, unpredictable and relentless, crashing down at the quietest times, flooding her with memories, reminders, and what-ifs that she cannot silence. At first, regret feels like replaying small moments. She remembers the times he reached out with kindness and she dismissed it. She recalls the times he asked for her attention and she was distracted or uninterested. She replays the arguments where pride took the wheel and she refused to meet him halfway. At the time, those moments seemed small, survivable, but now, in hindsight, they look massive. Regret magnifies them, because she understands now that each of those moments wasn't just an argument, wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was another crack in the foundation of something solid, something rare, something she never thought would collapse. Regret has a way of turning memory into torture. The same gestures she once took for granted suddenly feel priceless. The way he laughed at her jokes, the way he held her hand in silence, the way he defended her in public even when they weren't aligned in private. These things replay over and over until they are no longer memories but reminders of what she can't get back. And regret makes even the simplest memory sharp. What was once ordinary becomes irreplaceable. That cup of coffee he brought her in the morning, the text that checked in during the day, the patience in his eyes when she was upset, those small things become daggers when she realizes they'll never happen again. The most painful part of regret is that it is tied to choice. Unlike grief, which comes from losing something out of your control, regret is losing something you had power over. It's knowing you had a chance to value him, to cherish him, to honor his love, but you didn't. Regret whispers. You could have kept him. You could have protected this. You could have chosen differently. And that's what cuts the deepest, because it's not just about losing him, it's about knowing she played a role in the loss. She begins to ask herself dangerous questions. What if she had listened more? What if she had respected his boundaries instead of pushing past them? What if she had met his loyalty with equal loyalty, his patience with equal effort? Regret feeds on these questions, and the mind, once it starts down that path, rarely finds peace, because every what if has no resolution. There is no undo button. There is no second chance when a good man finally reaches his breaking point and walks away. Regret also has a way of creeping into comparison. She notices the difference between him and every other man she meets. Suddenly, she sees how rare his qualities were. Other men don't pay attention the way he did. They don't offer the same protection. They don't show the same consistency. And that contrast becomes unbearable. She realizes that what she once had was not common at all, and she wasted it by assuming it would always be there. This comparison deepens her regret because it exposes the reality that not everyone is capable of loving the way a good man loves. Regret can turn into self-blame, and that is where it becomes most destructive. She begins to internalize the loss not just as a mistake, but as a reflection of her worth. She tells herself she didn't deserve him, that she ruined her chance at something rare, that she can never find someone like him again. This spiral can be dangerous, because regret left unchecked becomes shame, and shame convinces her that she is defined by her mistakes, that she will never rise above them. But regret, as painful as it is, also carries a lesson. It shows her where she went wrong, not to punish her forever, but to wake her up. Regret forces her to see her blind spots. It highlights the behaviors, the neglect, the pride, the lack of appreciation that cost her someone valuable. And if she allows herself to face it fully, regret can become the seed of transformation. It can push her to change, to grow, to never repeat the same mistakes again. Yet, reaching that point is not immediate. In the beginning, regret feels like a prison. It follows her into the quiet moments, into bed at night when she replays conversations, into the mornings when she scrolls through her phone, half hoping, half dreading a message that will never come, into the lonely afternoons when she imagines what life would look like if she had chosen differently. Regret lingers in the places they once shared, the routines they once built, the life she thought was guaranteed. This stage of regret often comes with envy too. If she sees him move on, if she sees him smile again, if she sees him build the life she once had the chance to be part of, regret burns even more. Because she realizes that someone else now gets the version of him she didn't appreciate enough. Someone else is benefiting from the loyalty, the patience, the devotion she once had. And that realization is almost unbearable. But regret has two paths. It can destroy her, leaving her stuck in the cycle of self-blame, replaying what she lost over and over until it hardens her heart. Or it can humble her. It can teach her the weight of gratitude, the importance of valuing what is good when it is in front of her. It can make her stronger, wiser, more capable of recognizing worth when she sees it again. The choice lies in whether she stays trapped in the past or uses it as a catalyst for growth. Ultimately, the weight of regret is proof that she cared. That despite the mistakes, despite the blindness, she does feel the loss. And while regret is painful, it is also evidence that she has the capacity to learn, to do better, to rise from the ashes of her mistakes. The question is not whether she feels regret. The question is what she does with it. Does she allow it to define her, or does she allow it to refine her? And that choice is what determines everything that follows. Because regret may be heavy, but it doesn't have to be permanent. It can be the chain that keeps her locked in the past, or the fire that burns away her old self and makes room for someone stronger, wiser, and more aware. And when a woman loses a good man, that decision, what she does with regret, is the turning point that defines the rest of her life. The absence of a good man is not just a gap in conversation or an empty seat at the table. It is a void, vast and consuming, that touches every corner of a woman's life when he is no longer there. At first it feels like silence. She notices the quiet where his voice used to be, the empty space where his presence once grounded her. But soon, that silence grows louder, pressing in on her, reminding her of everything he once brought into her world. It's in the little things that the absence begins to hurt the most. The text messages that no longer arrive, the small reassurances she used to take for granted, the steady reliability she once thought was simply normal. Only now does she realize how extraordinary it truly was. This void is more than emotional, it is practical. When a good man is gone, the daily rhythm shifts in ways she never expected. The sense of security he provided, the way he carried responsibilities without needing to announce them, the invisible ways he shielded her from stress, those things are suddenly glaring in their absence. She notices it when she faces challenges alone, when she feels the weight of decisions that he used to help balance, when she looks around and realizes that nobody else is stepping into that role. The void is not just about missing his presence, it's about missing the stability he represented. And it's not just about what he did, it's about who he was. A good man changes the energy of a room. His steadiness calms chaos. His integrity builds trust. His loyalty gives comfort. When that energy disappears, the difference is undeniable. The void feels like a house without its foundation. The walls may still stand for a while, but the sense of safety is gone. Every interaction after him feels weaker in comparison. Because once you've experienced that kind of strength, anything less feels insufficient. The void deepens when she starts encountering others. Conversations with new men feel shallow, gestures feel half-hearted, intentions feel uncertain. She compares without meaning to, and no one measures up. Because when you've been loved by a good man, you know the difference. You know what it feels like to be protected, to be prioritized, to be respected in ways that are rare in today's world. And once you know that, anything else feels like a disappointment. That realization makes the absence heavier because it becomes clear that he was not easily replaced, not easily forgotten. The void also carries an emotional cost. Nights feel longer, loneliness cuts sharper. She begins to notice the small rituals that define their connection, the phone calls before bed, the inside jokes, the way he noticed her moods before she spoke a word. Those things are gone, and they leave an ache that cannot be filled with distractions. Even when she surrounds herself with friends or fills her schedule with noise, the quiet moments still remind her of what's missing. And that's the cruel truth about absence. It doesn't go away when you're busy. It waits. It waits for the stillness, the solitude, the silence. And when it finds you, it reminds you that something once whole is now broken. The void is not only about the loss of his presence, but about the loss of possibility. When he walked away, he took with him the future they could have built. She feels it in subtle ways when she imagines milestones they'll never share. When she thinks about memories that will never be made, the plans, the dreams, the someday moments, they vanish, and in their place is a hollow space filled with what-ifs. That's a kind of grief that lingers, because it isn't just about losing what was, it's about losing what could have. But perhaps the deepest cut comes from realizing the void is not just external, it becomes internal. His absence forces her to confront herself, to face the parts of her that failed to appreciate him, the choices that contributed to the loss. And that creates an emptiness inside that is harder to fill than any physical absence. It is the hollow feeling of accountability, the knowledge that she had something rare and let it slip away. That inner void is where the real battle begins, because no amount of outside noise or new connections can fill it. Only growth, only change, only facing the truth can begin to heal it. And yet, even in its pain, the void teaches her something powerful. It teaches her the value of presence. It makes her see clearly the worth of qualities she once overlooked. It shows her that the quiet strength of a good man is not something to be taken lightly. The void hurts, but it also educates. It's a reminder that love is not guaranteed, loyalty is not endless, and consistency is not common. And for those willing to learn, that lesson becomes a turning point. Still, the process of living through that void is not easy. It feels like walking through a house that used to be full of warmth, but now stands cold and empty. It feels like reaching for a hand that isn't there. It feels like calling out into silence. And the hardest part is knowing that the void exists because of a loss that cannot be undone. That finality makes it sting even more. But as devastating as the void feels, it also opens space for something new. The absence of a good man may leave her broken for a while, but it also challenges her to rebuild differently. It demands that she face herself, that she learn to stand on her own, that she discover strengths she didn't know she had. The void may feel like destruction, but it also clears the ground for rebirth. And while the pain of his absence may never fully fade, it can become the very force that pushes her toward becoming someone who never takes goodness for granted again. Because that is the truth of absence. It hurts, it teaches, and ultimately, it transforms. And while she may always carry the ache of losing him, she can also carry the wisdom it gave her. The void may have broken her for a season, but it also holds the potential to build her into someone stronger, sharper, and more aware than she's ever been. And in the end, that may be the only gift hidden inside the pain of losing a good man. The chance to rise from the emptiness with a deeper understanding of love, of value, and of herself. Accountability is one of the hardest mirrors to face, because it doesn't just reflect what was lost, it reflects the role you played in losing it. When a woman loses a good man, the shock comes first, the regret follows, and the emptiness of his absence sets in. But eventually, she has to come face to face with herself. It is no longer about his choices, his silence, or even his leaving. It becomes about her. The mirror of accountability does not lie, and it forces her to ask questions she may have spent years avoiding. Why did she see his value while he was there? Why did she dismiss his efforts, his patience, his sacrifices, as though they were guaranteed? Why did she push when she should have embraced, ignore when she should have listened, criticize when she should have appreciated? These are not comfortable questions. They sting. They pull at her pride. They strip away the excuses she may have leaned on. He'll always be there. He'll always forgive. He'll always try again. Because now he's gone, and those excuses mean nothing. The mirror shows her the truth. She underestimated a good man's limits. Facing this accountability is brutal because it requires vulnerability with oneself. It's easy to shift blame, to point outward, to say he left too soon, or he wasn't strong enough, or he gave up too easily. But deep down, she knows that isn't true. Good men don't walk away for no reason. Good men endure, they fight, they compromise, they pour themselves into relationships long past the point where most would have quit. When even a good man leaves, it means something fundamental was broken, and that reality forces her to examine her own patterns. The mirror of accountability also reveals her blind spots. Maybe she thought her independence was strength, but in reality it kept her from letting him lead or support her. Maybe she believed her criticism was honesty, when in fact it eroded his spirit. Maybe she thought he didn't need affirmation, that his strength meant he could survive without appreciation, when in truth, even the strongest men need to feel seen and valued. These blind spots were easy to ignore when he was there, but in his absence, they glare back at her through the mirror, undeniable and raw. Accountability also carries the sting of recognizing patterns. If she's honest, she may see that this wasn't the first time she took someone for granted or dismissed loyalty as though it was endless. She may realize she confused his patience with weakness and assumed his love was unconditional, forgetting that even unconditional love has boundaries when respect is missing. And as much as she wants to resist it, the mirror forces her to acknowledge that losing him wasn't just about one mistake, it was a series of choices, a series of missed opportunities, a series of moments where she could have chosen differently but didn't. There's another layer to accountability that is even harder. Admitting that she may not have been ready for the kind of man she lost. A good man demands maturity, not in words but in action. He requires reciprocity, not in perfection but in effort. He needs someone who can honor his loyalty with loyalty, his strength with respect, his patience with appreciation. And if she was not at that place in her own growth, then his presence was a gift she wasn't prepared to handle. The mirror forces her to accept this truth. And while it may be humbling, it is also clarifying. The pain of accountability is that it feels like betrayal of self. She wants to protect her ego, to say she did nothing wrong, to shield herself from the discomfort of guilt. But deep down she knows she cannot grow until she takes ownership. And ownership is what separates those who heal from those who repeat cycles. Without accountability, she risks losing again in the same way. With it, she has a chance to break patterns and build something better in the future. The mirror is harsh, but it is also a doorway. This stage is not about wallowing in shame. Shame says, I am unworthy. Accountability says, I could have done better, and I will do better. That's the difference. Shame destroys. Accountability transforms. A woman who stares into the mirror of accountability may cry. She may ache. She may feel the full weight of what she's lost, but if she stays with it, if she resists the urge to run from it, she will begin to see her own power. She will begin to understand that while she cannot change the past, she can change the future, and that is where her strength begins to rebuild. The mirror also teaches her empathy. When she sees her own flaws clearly, she begins to appreciate what he endured while he stayed. She realizes the strength it took for him to love her through her blind spots, the patience it required to carry her through her immaturity, the resilience he showed in giving her chance after chance. That realization can break her heart all over again, but it also expands her compassion. It makes her understand not only what she lost, but what he gave. And that perspective can forever shift how she views relationships moving forward. And here's the ultimate truth. Accountability is the foundation of growth. Without it, she stays stuck in blame, bitterness, and regret. With it, she can transform the pain into power. She can learn to recognize value before it slips away. She can learn to communicate with humility, to respect strength without trying to diminish it, to cherish loyalty without taking it for granted. The mirror of accountability may feel brutal, but it is also liberating. Because once you've faced yourself honestly, no one else can hold your past over you. You own it, you learn from it, and you rise above it. In the end, this mirror is not her enemy. It is her ally. It is the only thing standing between repeating the same mistakes and building a new life with a stronger foundation. And while losing a good man may have been the price she paid to see it, the reflection she gains from accountability can ensure she never pays that price again. The mirror hurts, yes, But the clarity it provides is the first step to becoming the kind of woman who will never again lose what is rare and valuable because of what she failed to see. When a woman loses a good man, there comes a moment where she stands at a crossroad. Up until now, the journey has been filled with shock, regret, and the hollow emptiness of his absence. She has stared into the mirror of accountability and faced the hard truth of her role in the loss. But now she must decide what comes next. This is the moment that defines her, not the loss itself, but what she does with it. At this crossroad, there are only two paths: collapse or rebirth. Collapse is the easier path. It is the path of surrendering to bitterness, drowning in self-pity, or numbing the pain with distractions that never truly heal. It is the path of letting regret harden into resentment, of telling herself that all men are the same, of convincing herself that love is nothing but a lie. Collapse looks like building walls so high that no one can ever reach her again, walls meant to protect, but that only isolate. Collapse is becoming smaller because of the pain, letting the loss define her as a victim rather than a survivor. Many women choose collapse without even realizing it. They bury the pain under busyness, under new relationships that act as bandages instead of healing, under bitterness that feels like strength but is really just fear disguised as armor. They allow the loss to poison their perspective, so they no longer see goodness when it shows up. Collapse doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens slowly, one decision at a time, until the woman who once had the chance to be shaped by the lesson is instead shackled by it. But there is another path: rebirth. And it is not the easy one. It requires courage, humility, and an unflinching willingness to face the truth. Rebirth demands that she sit with the pain instead of numbing it. It calls her to examine her patterns, to confront her blind spots, to take the loss not as punishment, as instruction. Rebirth is the choice to grow, to transform, to become better because of the heartbreak rather than broken by it. Rebirth begins with acceptance. Acceptance that the good man is gone, that the chapter has ended, that no amount of regret or bargaining will bring him back. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It means facing reality without running from it. When she accepts, she frees herself from the torment of what-ifs and if-onlys. She stops trying to change the past and begins to focus on shaping the future. Acceptance hurts, but it also liberates. From acceptance comes responsibility. In the path of rebirth, she owns her mistakes, but she does not let them define her. She uses accountability as a tool, not a weapon against herself. She says, "Yes, I failed to value what I had. Yes, I made mistakes, but I will not waste this pain. I will grow from it. I will become the kind of woman who recognizes worth when it stands in front of me. The kind of woman who knows how to nurture what is rare." This is where regret begins to transform into wisdom. Rebirth also requires resilience. She will feel the ache of his absence for a long time. She will have nights when the loneliness feels unbearable, when the silence screams, when memories play like films in her head. But resilience says, "I will not let this break me. I will rise, even when it hurts. I will use this ache as a reminder to keep moving forward." Rebirth is not about erasing the pain. It's about building strength through it. As she grows into this new version of herself, she begins to see differently. She no longer takes loyalty for granted, because she understands how rare it is. She no longer mistakes patience for weakness, because she knows the strength it takes for a man to keep showing up. She no longer withholds appreciation, because she has felt the sting of losing someone who deserved it, but rarely heard it. In this way, rebirth doesn't just change her, it redefines her. It elevates her into someone wiser, sharper, more grounded. The path of rebirth also leads to self-respect. When she recognizes the value of a good man, she also begins to recognize the value in herself. She realizes that if she wants to attract and keep someone rare, she must become rare herself. She invests in her growth, her discipline, her maturity. She learns to manage her emotions instead of letting them control her. She learns to communicate with grace instead of pride. She learns to see love as a responsibility, not just a privilege. And in doing so, she becomes not only a better partner, but a stronger woman overall. The crossroad is not easy. Collapse calls with its false comfort, its walls, its bitterness, its refusal to feel. Rebirth calls with its sharp honesty and the demand for transformation. One path keeps her trapped in the past, the other forces her into the discomfort of growth. But only one leads to freedom. Only one makes the loss meaningful. Only one turns heartbreak into fuel for a stronger future. The truth is, losing a good man will always leave a scar. That scar doesn't disappear, but scars are proof of survival, proof of lessons learned, proof that pain was endured and transformed into strength. If she chooses rebirth, that scar will not be a mark of shame, but a mark of power, a reminder of where she has been, and a signal to never repeat the same mistakes again. At this crossroad, everything comes down to choice. Will she collapse, letting the pain define her and the regret consume her? Or will she rise, allowing the loss to strip away her old self and make room for something greater? This is the ultimate test of character, the defining moment of her story. Because in the end, the loss of a good man is not just about him, it is about her. It is about who she becomes in the aftermath. It is about whether she chooses to remain broken or chooses to rebuild. And if she chooses rebirth, then losing him, as painful as it was, becomes the very thing that transforms her into the strongest version of herself. There comes a moment when every story of loss stops being about the person who left and becomes about the person who remains. Losing a good man is devastating. There is no denying the shock, the regret, the emptiness, and the weight of accountability. But the truth is, the final chapter is not about him. It is about you. It is about who you choose to become in the aftermath of losing something rare. You can collapse under the weight of what you lost, replaying the same memories until they harden into bitterness. Or you can rise. You can decide that the pain will not be wasted. You can turn the regret into wisdom, the emptiness into strength, the accountability into discipline, and the loss into rebirth. That is the gift hidden inside the heartbreak. An invitation to grow into someone greater than you were before. A good man is not easily replaced. His presence, his loyalty, his protection, those are treasures. And if you ever take them for granted, the consequences are permanent. But even in the permanence of loss, there is power. The scar left behind is not meant to shame you. It is meant to remind you to never overlook what is valuable again. To remind you that love is not guaranteed. It is earned. It is nurtured. It is respected every single day. So here's the message you must take with you. The end is not the end, unless you decide it is. The silence, the absence, the heartbreak, they are not your final sentence. They are your beginning. They are your chance to rebuild into a woman who knows her worth, who recognizes worth in others, and who never again allows pride, neglect, or blindness to cost her something priceless. When a woman loses a good man, it can break her. But when she chooses to rise, it can also make her. And that choice, that crossroad, is where the real story begins. Now ask yourself, will you let this loss define you, or will you let it refine you? Because the answer to that question will not just shape how you heal from this moment, it will shape the rest of your life.